G'day guys, Clint here, recording episode number 51 of The Full Landscape with Brent Reid from Candeo Design. Brent is obviously based in Victoria. We met 3 years ago at the Melbourne International Flower and Gardens show and have, I guess, loosely had threatened each other that we'd do this podcast at some point, and we've just been really busy with life. He's now running the London College of Garden Design over in Victoria, as well as running his landscape design business. So he's a busy man. He's been quite successful throughout his whole career, firstly working for a landscaper and then moving into landscape design. He's won some gold medals at the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show. He's been involved with The Block. He's been involved with the Backyard Blitz back in the day with Jamie Dury, for any of you old enough to remember that one. So for anyone that's in the landscape design game or that's thinking about moving into the landscape design game, this is a great one for you. If you've got any questions for Brent or myself, please feel free to stick them in the comments section below. Other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
G'day, I'm Brent Reid, landscape designer, principal of Candeo Design and one of the directors of London College of Garden Design. Been a landscape designer for 16, 17 years, in horticulture or landscaping for 25. Career landscaper.
Did you finish high school?
Yeah, I did, yep.
Yep. So you weren't a problem child or anything, move into landscaping? And
No. I kind of liked year 12 just because all my friends went to school. I didn't like school, but I liked the fact that all my friends were in the one place every day. That was good fun. So I finished high school begrudgingly. Didn't get good marks at all. I did like graphics and art and studio art and computers and English. But you
passed.
I passed. I do have a pass from VCE, but my mates give me heaps of shit about my tertiary entrance rank that I got.
But no one can see that. It's like, for me, I look like with golf, no one can actually see where the ball went. They just see the score at the end of the game. So just
Well, I passed, and that's all my mum wanted me to do. So yeah.
Had you made a commitment to her that you'd finish year 12? Was that what you mean?
Yeah, that was the deal. We had the discussion at the start of year 12, and she said, if you do it, you've got to pass. Otherwise, go and get a job. So
either leave year 11 now, get a job, or I'll support you, stay at school.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
so you did that.
Yeah. Look, I'm from working class household. My dad was an electrician, and my mum was a librarian. If you didn't go to school, you worked. That was the deal in our house. So
I think that's fair. I guess the generation, and you and I are a pretty similar generation, I'd say. I was the same, working class household. I didn't really. Mum kind of just let me do what I wanted at that point, but I wasn't sitting at home. Like if I didn't finish at year 12, I dropped out, but it was to get a job. So there wasn't even a discussion about it. I wanted to go start working. So anyway, you finished school, or did you go straight into work? Like, was obviously in line with what your mum was saying. You finished year 12. Could you have time off, or you wanted to go straight into work?
I think I goofed around for about a week, and at that stage, I'd been working on holidays, like school holidays and stuff, with a friend who was a plasterer. So I just would go, school holidays at least one of the weeks. I'd just go and labour as a plasterer. He really wanted me to be his apprentice, and I didn't have that much interest in it. It was, I don't know. It was hard work, and I didn't mind the work. I enjoyed being on work sites and things like that. I don't know. It probably just didn't have the creativity in it that I was hoping for. Having said that, I had no plan on being a landscaper or a horticulturalist either. So,
was there a plan? It was just finished?
Yeah, I wanted to draw for a living. That was my plan for my whole life. I didn't care what it was. I wanted to draw, whether that was design or... Yeah, that was the plan.
And hand draw? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
I guess computer sketching wasn't really a thing back then, was it?
No. My dad I say he was an electrician. He was an electrician, went back and studied electrical engineering, became an electrical engineer. So he used CAD a lot for, drafting and design work of electrical systems, things like that. So I sort of knew that CAD existed. We had it in our household. But yeah, I think when I say draw, I think I probably more mean be creative. I've done jobs that have been just basically labour and pretty mundane, and I think too much. It gives me too much time to think, and it just, mate, it's a shortcut to me going crazy. That stuff.
I'm familiar with that brain.
Yeah.
So obviously you found work after that week and moved into landscaping, or? I probably
goofed around for the best part of a year trying to find a job. I hadn't. I love cars, and I worked at a car detailing place for about 3 weeks, and I worked with the plasterer full time for probably about 3 or 4 months. And I did a few jobs. I ended up getting an apprenticeship in a printing company doing graphic reproduction, which, crazy now, that job's pretty much extinct. So it was a blessing in disguise that they kind of ended up, on the last day of my probation, they called me in the office and said, "Don't come Monday." And that was the Friday, and on the Sunday afternoon, my best mate's dad, whose surname just happens to be Semkin, walked me around to his brother's house, Martin Semkin's house, and stood me on the doorstep and said, "Have you got any work for his nephew's best mate?" And he said, "You can have 2 weeks." And I worked there for like 7.5 years, nearly 8 years or something.
For everyone listening or watching that doesn't understand the relevance of that, I guess obviously if you've been to MIFCUS or you've spent time in Melbourne or you've in the landscape industry, that makes sense to people. But what does that mean for people watching in the US or other states of Australia? Okay,
Semkin Landscaping is probably, I don't know, if they're not the biggest private landscape company in Australia, I'll be surprised. Yeah, they're. My understanding is they're probably the most awarded landscape company on the planet. They've obviously spent a lot of time presenting gardens at Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show. They've done Chelsea numerous times. They're probably one of the industry leaders in the landscape industry here in Australia and more so Victoria. So the name Semkin Landscaping, is pretty decent here in Australia, and a lot of guys from the UK have come over and worked for Semkin. Don't know about the US. That'd be interesting to find out actually. But,
we've got a bit of an audience in the US. It seems to have kind of happened. I don't know. Obviously, the population's there and there's irrigation there, but
yep.
I thought it would be important to share that, and I guess almost a bit of a shout out to them. So obviously, it was a bit of a sliding doors moment. Like, you happened to go there. Like, you could have gone anywhere, or you could have got a job anywhere.
Yep.
Do you think? I mean, it's pretty hard to answer, but you wouldn't have found landscaping if it wasn't for that?
No, not at all, mate. I went on my first day, and I absolutely hated it.
And why? Because there was no drawing?
No, it was just, mate, honestly, it was a month before Christmas, and having 2 weeks work was like, okay, I've got 2 more weeks to find out what's next kind of thing. And I was just happy to have 2 weeks of pay, to be honest.
Yeah, money for Christmas, yep.
Yeah. And,
warm weather.
Yep. And I got home after the first day, and I said to my mum, I'm not going back. And she goes, "You're going back.
You're doing 2 weeks. You said you'd do 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're going back, and you're finishing the week. And if you still feel the same on Friday afternoon, you can have the conversation with Martin and Mark and tell them thank you, but no, it's not for you."
Yep.
She said, "But at absolute worst, you're finishing this week." And I went on the next, I turned up the next day and hated it, absolutely hated it. It was, and then the third day wasn't as bad. Fourth day was okay. On Friday, I was so knackered at the end of the day that I finished, and instead of going in and telling them thanks but no thanks, I actually thought it was easier to just do another week. And I thought they'll probably move me on at the end of next week anyway. So I thought I'll do the second week and I'll just get through it and let natural selection take its course. And at the end.
So your mum's obviously had a big part in like you've mentioned her twice now. Like,
yep.
Obviously, it's important that it sounds like she's instilled integrity into you, and like if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it.
Yeah, 100%, mate. She's pretty honest, straight down the line sort of a person. That's how we were brought up. The old, if you're going to do it properly, and if you say you're going to do it, you follow through. So I think generally I'm pretty good with that. I'm pretty bad with it when people don't give me an open-ended, just come around whenever. If you say to me, come and design my garden just whenever you're in the area,
you've got time.
It is never happening, ever.
Yep, I'm familiar with that. I'm the guy that used to do my homework the morning of when it was due, and like I prep for this podcast throughout the week, but I generally sit down and write down the questions 15 minutes before it starts. Like, it's just, I think there's actually a theory or a mathematical equation that the time a job takes is the time that you've been given for the job minus 10 minutes or something. So I think until it really hurts you, you won't change. And it's never hurt me. Like, I've just keep getting it done. So you just kind of, all right.
I agree with that. We recently did the block, and like this season of the block that's out at the moment.
Yep.
And
well, there's a really good example of jobs taking exactly the amount of time you've got. Mate, the whole show is that.
Yeah. However much time you get given, that's how much time it'll take. And if you take time away from us, we'll just work out how to make it.
We'll steal it back somewhere. Yeah.
It was the same thing, mate. It's whatever you give me, I'll just have a crack at, get it done. So
yeah, I'm a bit guilty of that. Say yes and work it out later. I think that can sometimes get fatiguing. But is that kind of how you've? I mean, obviously, I want to talk about the journey between working for Martin and then to where you are now. But from now, do you think that that's why you've done so much? Like I saw that you were doing work with Backyard Blitz before, obviously underemployment, and then obviously you're involved in the block. You've done however many, I don't know if you're at double figures, Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, international travel for New Zealand and England and the UK. Is it just saying yes? Like, just the opportunity comes up and you just say yes?
Yeah, 100%. Yep. And unfortunately, I really have trouble saying no. It's something that I've had to learn in the last few years. I hate doing it because I hate, it's that old thing. If you say no to this one, will that opportunity ever pop up again? And I absolutely hate doing it. But yeah, I just say yes and work the rest out later. And I've been really fortunate that I've had, my wife worked in the business for 6 years, so she understands it. She understands, that me saying yes to things actually generally pays our mortgage. And, it's also given us, as a couple and our family, some pretty amazing opportunities. So, yeah, me saying yes to a lot of things, she gets it, so she is amazingly supportive of that. But sometimes it just comes with a head scratch from her, like, we're doing what, or you're doing what, when, and along with all the other things that you've said yes to as well. So
that's another familiar story. But I guess it's quite hard to do what we do without having a supportive partner that almost, and I definitely in my case, and it's funny, I think I spoke about this last week, in the last episode of the podcast, was like my wife's she's actively chosen to put her hopes and dreams aside, so that I can chase mine. She was employed and liked it and enjoyed her job.
Yep.
And because I've had this constant, I'll just buy another business and I'll open another business and we'll just keep doing stuff, it's meant that I can't be a 50-50 stay-at-home parent or, so I think that's often, I don't know if it's like that for you, but often you'll get all of the credit, but you're really only doing half of the work. If you're talking at home, so. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. I'm pretty lucky. My wife's she's an introvert, so she doesn't want the spotlight.
Yep. So that's the same.
She likes. She definitely likes a thank you, and she likes a little bit of appreciation, but not publicly. She's really
I'm the same.
Really pretty quiet and pretty laid back. So yeah.
So going back to obviously working for Semken, you were landscaping. You're now landscape designing.
Yep.
How did that transition happen? Like, were you just really shit, or just didn't have the body for it?
Well, I'm 6'7", so yeah. No,
okay, that's a good start.
Not ideal for paving or.
You should have moved into hedging or I don't know, tree lopping.
Yeah, great for gutter cleaning and
painting,
light bulbs and stuff like that. But I didn't have the ideal body shape to be a landscaper. And no, I'm not an amazing landscaper. You don't want me to build your garden, but maybe design it. I started off doing some construction stuff, working on construction crews. I was pretty good with irrigation, installing irrigation and garden lighting and things like that. Like a lot of those really quite repetitious jobs where you have to be careful and there's a process and all of those things. I was actually really pretty good at that sort of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. Like you've got a task and you've got a process and go and do it. I quite enjoyed that. And then it just got to the point, I met Carolyn Blackman and Joby Blackman from Vivid Design at a garden show, and I was just labouring for Semken in about 97 or 98. And
Semken had a garden going in?
Yeah, they were building Carolyn and Joby, Vivid Design's garden. And and I met them, and I'm like, your job's what? Like, you design gardens? Like, that's insane. I think I want to do that. Like,
you get paid money to draw pictures.
Yeah.
Which is without being disrespectful.
Yeah, and it just kind of it was like, because by that stage I'd enjoyed the industry, and Martin Semken sort of sat me down and said either piss off and go and get a real job or go and get educated. So by that stage, I think I'd started studying at Burnley.
Because he cared about your career path, like he knew that you weren't going to be doing this, and
either do it properly and go and get an education, or go and find what you want to do. And he did. He showed some genuine care. I remember the park bench he sat me down on to have that discussion in Fitzroy Gardens in the city, and it was a real crossroad moment, and I was a bit shocked, almost like, what, you're trying to get rid of me? And he goes, no, I'm not trying to get rid of you. I'm saying either get educated so we can give you a proper job, or go and find the job that you want to do for the rest of your life, or just work it out. And
is that his style? He's just got good EQ and like that's why the business is so big. I'm guessing the staff turnover is low to none if he's got that kind of personality.
Yeah, mate.
Just a good dude.
They've got half a dozen, maybe more people that have been with him for 20 years or more. So that speaks volumes. Yeah, there's genuine care there for the staff and the people, and he works today. He works as hard today as he did the day that I met him. 25 years ago, probably harder, to be quite honest.
Especially has he got kids?
He does. There's one.
Older kids?
Yeah. They're all older. They're all adults. One works in the business. The other two aren't involved. And, Yeah, mate.
I think that I'll probably work harder than I do now, and I work a lot, but I think I'll work more when my kids are out of home, or at least when they're in their late teens, and they no longer care about having me around or being involved. I think, obviously, my wife might want me to do some kind of bullshit canal kind of down the European rivers or some shit, but I'm going to be selling sprinklers, man.
That sounds delightful, though, for a week.
You should go.
Hey, that sounds awesome. Fuck, I'd do that for a week. But
no, Europe for a week's good. I reckon I could do Europe for a week.
Yeah.
Like, do it
the
around
last
Christmas.
3 days, I'd probably be thinking about all the shit I've got to do when I get back, though.
I think you'd probably be inspired and you'd be like, oh, that's good. Like, I might draw that. That's nice.
Yeah.
But I don't have that. So let's talk about what that transitional period looks like. So you go from, did you get a job with Vivid or?
I tried. I turned up to a garden show and I can't remember what year it was. It was maybe 2003, 2004, something like that. And I went to the garden show, and my whole purpose was to get a job with Vivid Design.
As in, you were building there, or you were just walking around like, hey?
No, I was working for Semken, and Semken were building a garden for Vivid. They were building a garden for Jim Fogarty. They were probably building a couple of other gardens. And I went to the garden show with the sole focus that I'm going to hound Vivid into submission and they're going to give me a job. And was
that awkward for your current employer, or would that have just been a conversation, or he was like, look, you've got my blessing, go find a job?
They knew that that's where I wanted to go. I was pretty open with Martin and Mark about that at the time. And I left the garden show with a job with Jim Fogarty.
Okay, so you went just scattergun approach, or you kind of got...
Not at all.
Was it a no?
No.
Or you just got a no?
I don't know if I saw Vivid. Like, I certainly worked a lot on Jim Fogarty's garden. And
okay.
There was an opportunity, I reckon it was Sunday morning, and I got there early, and at that stage I was installing all the garden lighting for Jim's garden. And I was the only one on site, and Jim turned up, and I was up a ladder putting in a pendant light over his pergola, and he came in and he said, oh, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just finishing off this garden lighting. And we just got talking, and he said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want your job. And he looked at me really funny, and I thought, oh, stuff this up. And he goes, what do you mean by that? And I said, I want to be a designer. I want to design gardens like you do. That's what I want to do. And he went, oh, right, okay. And he walked away, and he came back about 2 hours later, and he said, you obviously work for Martin and Mark. Like, if I knew of a job going, how would you handle it? And I said, well, I wouldn't do anything without them knowing about it.
Yeah.
It's not how I operate. And he goes, oh, that's good. He goes, I think we should have a chat to him. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, I'm looking for someone. And and you've got construction knowledge, you've got some plant knowledge, and you want to be a designer. So he said...
Sounds like the right recipe. So you had no formal education in landscape design at that point?
I'd done a couple of units at Burnley just on landscape design. That was about it. It's when I started.
And for him, was that one of those situations where he really needed to, like, you weren't going to go hire someone that's qualified? Like, it was a good opportunity to train someone his way and work like that? Or?
Yeah, back then it was really strange. Like, it probably wasn't as easily accessible in terms of education as what there are now. So he had a girl named Amanda Greer working for him, and she sort of did the books a bit and did some CAD, and I knew a little bit of CAD, like just from being around my father and CAD in the house and stuff like that. And I certainly, before I started with Jim, I got my dad to give me some crash courses in how to use CAD a bit better than what I could. And it was just, I knew how to build gardens. I'm pretty anal with how to draw things, so it was just kind of, all I had to do was learn the computer skills to be able to be valuable to Jim's office, which
Yep.
which didn't take well, it took a while to, become very proficient. But within a couple of days, I was producing work that could go to clients. So,
was it a situation? I think I remember my mate when I first got my driver's license saying, "All right, you've got your license. Now it's time for you to learn how to drive." Was it a bit like that? Like you've got your job. Now it's time to learn to design. Like, did you go in cocky, or like you respected you had no idea at that point?
Oh, mate,
do you know what I mean?
Totally cocky. I knew everything, mate.
You and I are fucking like twins.
Yeah, I was like 25 or 26 or something, absolute bulletproof. So,
yep.
Yeah, no, I knew everything. And I'd been doing, like, we'll call it design work, like hand drawing gardens for Semken to present to clients to win projects kind of thing for a few years.
Mainly residential?
Yeah. And yeah, it was just a natural progression, and I was going to be the best designer that's walked the face of the earth. That was at 26.
How did that go? Did he get slapped around a bit, or was he a good?
Oh, mate.
Was it?
It was a huge learning curve, and sitting there working on somebody else's work, and it was really interesting. But mate, I learned heaps working for Jim, and I learned one of the biggest things I learned in that office was a real passion for plants. Like, those guys were nothing like I'd ever seen in terms of understanding plants, loving plants, wanting to learn and progress and understand new plants and more plants, and that was amazing. That's the best thing that came out of that, because I was probably a landscaper plants guy back then. Like, I knew a bit of horticulture.
So the 12 or 16 plants that are on the list
Yep.
that go into every job, they're the ones, and there's no others kind of thing?
Yeah. So, it was crazy. So that was one of the huge things. And I started looking at gardens on weekends and stuff like that, which I'd never done. Like, mate, I was more about going to basketball games or footy or, hanging out.
Well, you're 25-year-old. Yeah, like. So do you feel like much has changed? So how long, this is 16 years ago you started doing that? Yeah.
No, I still love drinking beers. Is that what you... No?
I know, don't worry, I know. So do you think much has changed around horticultural or the use of plants in design? Do you feel like we're in any better situation nationally from a design standpoint? I'm guessing you see a bit of work. Like, is it still a bit vanilla, or are we better than we were then?
We're better than we were, and we're in a real phase of plants being appreciated again. Like, probably...
Yep.
During the 2000s, I thought we went really hard landscape, and
I remember it being quite sandstony as well.
Yeah,
but that might have just been south. That might have just been down here. I wasn't seeing what was over there.
Yeah, it was pretty hard landscaping dominated, and I think there's a pretty good undercurrent back towards plants these days. I still think we've got probably a long way to go, and I've over the last few years, which I'm sure we'll touch on a bit later, I've spent a lot more time dealing with the UK, and we're pushing more to the UK style of gardens at the moment than the hard landscaping. There's a lot of people trying to do perennial meadows or wanting to do perennials and meadow gardens and things like that. So reclaiming hard landscaping for soft landscaping and things like that. It's an interesting time at the moment.
Where does the responsibility, obviously, let's assume that there is a responsibility to make that change. Where does that lie? Is it with designers or is it with plant growers? Like, do we have enough access? Because I'm roughly across plant distribution and plant growing. Obviously, it takes a lot of time for them to bring in a new plant, and then for there to be breeders' rights, and they've got to sell a certain number of plants. Like, is it just about better communication between landscape designers and nurseries, or where does that all fit in, do you think?
It's an interesting question, actually. because here in Melbourne at the moment, over the last 2 years, or during COVID, it's been so hard to get plants in general.
Yep.
But for the last probably 4 or 5 years, there's some glitches in the system, which I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think the industry's growing, and it's pretty hard to cast forward. You know, how many numbers of things you need to grow each year with a growing industry, and you know, the last thing you want to do as a nursery is be stuck with all this stock on the ground for another year and have to pot it up and do all those things. So, you know, it's an interesting juggling act. But I think as designers, designers are doing a decent job of pushing forward. And I think the communication between designers and nurseries is getting better and better. And backwards and forwards, even between the industries like NGIV and things like that. And you know, I think those levels of communication are getting better, which is pushing more plants out into you know, into landscapes. And I think in general, I think landscape designers want to use plants. I think that's the majority of where the passion comes from is for plants and planting design. I certainly haven't come across too many designers that all I want to do is design structures and hard landscaping stuff.
Well, that feels a bit more architecture, doesn't it? Like, without knowing everything, but you know, if you want to design some really trendy architecture, obviously, if you're more interested in working with concrete and steel, then that feels like a different career path. But it's interesting. I didn't notice plants until I had my backyard designed. It just didn't radar for me. Like lawn, obviously massive. Owning an irrigation shop, it's a heavy part of what we do. Irrigating a garden does not change much, if at all, for us. It's just, you know, drip tube across the whole garden bed, and then the plants grow. So it was interesting when you start to see the textures and the colours and the locations of plants and the you'll be able to describe it better, but the heights changing and everything. And there's a lot there. And I've got a mate here who is, you know, 5th generation nurseryman, and just hearing his side of it, going, we need to plan 7 years ahead or 5 years ahead, and we need to understand what's going to be popular in South Australia, what's happening in say the UK is the reference point, what's happening in the UK. And then obviously you'll get this, like, I want my garden to look like this, and you're like, well, we don't have the climate for that. But yeah, I guess it's an interesting dilemma, and I didn't expect you to have all the answers, but I was just curious to get your point of view. Yeah,
no, it is interesting, and I think nurseries are listening as well. I know there's a couple of particular nurseries. One in particular, every 12 or 18 months, I'd have a conversation with them about what are we using, what do I want to be using that, you know, they don't grow. Like there are a few nurseries out there that do reach out to some of their designers that buy and specify stock off them regularly about what's in the future, what could be good, what shouldn't they be bothering with. You know, whether they listen or not, who knows? But it's.
You'd hope that if they're asking the question, they're listening to the answer. But sometimes people like to ask questions just to confirm their opinion, not to listen to the answer. Over here, we've had obviously COVID's impacted the industry a lot, but I think the industry is also moving in a more professional way, and landscaping has become more of a recognised trade. We're having a bit of a shortage of available employment or employees and skilled trades. Do you think that this is a two-sided question, that there's more landscape design being done in the country now than ever before? And do you think there's going to be a shortage, or there currently is a shortage of qualified landscape designers in at least Victoria, but if not the rest of the country?
Another interesting question. Yes, there's definitely more landscape design being done than there ever has been. When I started, I felt like part of my job was educating people about what and why you'd actually get a landscape done. And, you know, some of those simple answers were, if you're going to spend $100,000 on a landscape, you probably should know where your money's being spent and know what that quote's in regards to. So, you know, if people are spending that much money, then yeah, by all means.
And $100,000, like that's you obviously trying to connect with the average Joe as average as possible, you'd be designing gardens 5 times that, I'm guessing. Or they're being built.
Yeah,
they're being built.
You know what? I was
that.
probably thinking about when I started. 100,000.
Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah, to do 100,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, mate. The truth is, we don't do a lot under a couple $100,000.
Yep.
Like most of the stuff we do's got a swimming pool in it, and when you take $100,000 out of a budget for a swimming pool,
it's gone.
$100,000 is actually not a lot of money for landscaping, and
you've got a bit of money left to buy the toys for the pool, and that's it.
Yeah. So look, it's and I hate being flippant with numbers because $200,000 is a hell of a lot of money, but yeah, we've done projects that are, I don't know, 200 to 1.5 million. We got one that's a project that I've been doing since 2006, and I've got absolutely no idea, like no concept of what they've spent. Don't want to know. Yeah. But
yeah, and it's not why you do it, I guess. So it's not really relevant.
No,
but I guess it's more out of interest for. I just feel like the landscape industry is finally getting its time in the sun, and then landscape design and landscape architecture is finally getting its time where you're like, you need to do this. Like, if I'm a landscaper, I'm not building this unless it's been designed. I'm getting more of that here. Like, unless this is designed, I'm not quoting it. We're not like, I'm not just doing a sketch on a piece of paper, because it's not apples and apples firstly, but there's going to be an expectation from the client that's going to be very different to what gets built in most cases. So do you think we're going to have a shortage of landscape designers in the next 5 to 10 years?
I got no concept that we'll run out of landscape designers. I think it's kind of the... I think we'll run out of garden maintenance people before we run out of landscape designers. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm seeing that here as well.
Trying to find good garden maintenance people is harder than finding good garden designers. You can throw a stone and hit a garden designer at the moment.
Or someone that calls themselves a garden designer.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. Like I see and I hope for some form of regulation in the landscape design industry in the next 10 years. So I mean, you mentioned before London College of Garden Design. Talk to me about that. That's obviously connected to this. Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, I'm imagining. Anyway, I won't even imagine. Like, you're involved. You're a director of that.
Yeah. So London College of Garden Design has been running for about 16 years, I think, in the UK, and it was started as an educational training for landscape designers.
So that's recognised differently. Like, that's a recognised education authority in London or in England?
Yeah, correct.
Or in the UK?
And the UK setup is a bit different to here in Australia. So you come out with actual diplomas and real diplomas of a real qualification in the UK.
As compared to what here you get I don't know, like, what do you get here?
So here we give away a diploma from the UK. You can actually get diplomas, you can get degrees. You can get a diploma of landscape design from some of the other institutes, but there's actually no qualification to be a landscape designer here in Australia. So you get a diploma to be...
So if you can say you're a landscape designer and put it on a website and a business card, but you don't actually have to have any... Like, if you want to be an architect, you can't just say that.
Correct.
You have to have done architecture at uni.
Yeah. So, or have recognised learning in the field and time and those sorts of things. So, yeah, it's sort of a bit of a weird situation here in Australia, and I think that's part of the problem. Is there's people that have never been involved in the industry. There's people that have never really been educated, and they like plants, and they become landscape designers. And maybe they've got a good network of people, and all of a sudden they're designing gardens for $200, $300, $500,000, and they've actually got no idea what goes into those gardens being built. And I think they may have an idea, but it's kind of irrelevant if it's too loose to say, well, some have an idea and some don't.
we need a line
Yeah.
in the sand that this is what you need to be to call yourself a landscape or a garden designer. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I see this going. That's where I see it going in Australia in the next 10 years. I kind of hope it does anyway. And yeah, you know, London College, I bought London College of Garden Design in from the UK, so I've known the guys in the UK for a number of years. And I actually sat on a panel for Landscape Victoria to discuss the education and training of landscape designers. And the first question was, who does anybody think that training of landscape designers in Victoria is up to standard? And I think there was 30 of us in the room, and there was 30 no's. But not one person said yes, it's adequate. And that was landscape designers and landscape architects. So, and that was also around the time that I'd heard the news that Burnley College was shutting down a lot of its courses. And I literally walked out of that meeting and I wrote an email to Andrew Fisher-Tomlin, who's one of the directors of London College of Garden Design in the UK. And I said, if you've ever thought about taking London College of Garden Design international, now's the time, and it's in Victoria, it's in Australia. And I got an email pretty much straight back saying, we actually have thought about it. We've just been in discussions with a university in Italy, but it was too hard to translate everything into Italian from English. So we had the discussion about going to the US, New Zealand or Australia, and they were probably leaning towards the US when I sent the more
population
email.
more makes sense.
So
and so how did that evolve? You became a director, like you're involved in the actual day-to-day operations of that here?
Yeah, correct. So I'm head of the course, and the guys in the UK are involved. So I do some lecturing. I run the business, like, you know, from a general manager point of view, day-to-day sort of operations. And yeah, it's been mind-blowing. I certainly, when I sent that email, I didn't really have any thought that it'd be me that's part of the business. I just saw an opportunity, and
if they can come over and do it, then you've helped them out, you've helped Victoria out. Everything's good.
Join the dots and keep designing gardens. And the longer the conversations went on, the discussion between me and my wife was stay involved until there's an absolute clear sign that this is not for you.
Yeah. When they say, "Hey, dude, stop calling us.
Stop,
this is not. This has nothing to do with you.
Stop turning up. You're starting to make it awkward." Yeah, and it never came. And the more I got involved, and the more I learned, the more I learnt about it, the more I actually thought, you know what, it's time to do this. It's time to move sideways or backward, whatever it is. I think it's probably forward, but you know.
So it's 100% privately owned.
Correct. Yeah, it's 3.
Yep. So no government involvement from that side of things.
No.
Is there? And it's probably a hard question for you to answer, but would it be considered like a premier landscape design education business in the country? Is there other competitors? I have no idea, I'm not trying to throw this up as like a
in the UK,
a pie for you to
in the UK it is. It's the best place to study in the UK or Europe.
So if you're going to be, you're like, I want to be a garden designer, it's there. It's the Harvard or the Yale or like you're going there to study.
So people will travel from all over the world to go and study in the UK. And I guess they're quite lucky in terms of Europe. But people from the US, people from Australia have gone to the UK to study for the year in their one of their programs. And that's our goal for here. We make it the best place in the Southern Hemisphere to go and study landscape design. So it's all the same education. So in the UK they run three different programs. So they do a year-long landscape design course, and then they do a half-year landscape, like planting design course, and they do a half-year construction design course, whereas we've taken...
So 2 full years.
Yeah, but you do them all individually. Whereas we've taken all three and rolled them into a 2-year course. And
made more sense to you to be doing it all at the same time?
Yeah, that was one of the things in this landscape, in this discussion with Landscape Victoria. Kind of the minimum training employers are expecting is 2 years of education. So I kind of felt like after that 2 years was right. And it gave us the opportunity to actually roll all three parts of the course together and make something that we thought was right for Australia.
So how long has that been operating in Australia for?
At the end of October, we'll finish our 2nd year.
Jesus, so you started this mid-COVID, well, hang on a sec. What was the connection? So did you start, you were in conversations, we're going to do this, and then COVID happened?
1st of March, and then 1st of March 2020 was our first day of class here in Australia. Yeah.
Right, what do they say? Pressure makes diamonds or something. So you're doing that. You're doing obviously. Yeah, I don't want to start any more businesses. I like my Lego hair. So you were doing that. You're still operating Candeo, obviously. Do you have staff at Candeo?
No, not anymore. It's just me now. So you're doing all your design, running that, doing stuff like the block, doing MIFCUS. This explains what you were saying before about your wife getting a bit like, dude, as long as you say thank you every now and then, please. Probably the good thing is I haven't done a MIFCUS because it hasn't happened. So I haven't had to throw
you've had 2 years off. That was sad. We were coming over because that's where we met. I just haven't seen you since 2019. I think we were over there. Yep. And we were meant to come over 2020. We had 30 landscapers booked. We were coming over. It was going to be even bigger than the one we had. I think we'd spent 30 grand. I mean, we got most of the money back and it wasn't all my money, but we had 30 grand worth of flights and accommodation booked. And we were going to do that, the Thursday night at with you guys at the cocktail event. Yep. And even in March, I was like, nah, it'll still go ahead. It'll still, I was like, I'm not going away because of this whatever is going on. And then sadly it happened. But I've only got about 10 minutes left, so I want to fire off. Sorry, go.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely heartbreaking. I'd actually said no to MIFCUS just probably in January. They came to me and asked me to do a garden, and I said yes. And we were juggling sites, and in the end, it just got too hard. The college was kicking
Was it
off.
The 25-year anniversary?
Yeah,
it was meant to be the 25-year anniversary.
Yeah. So,
so you had to have won a medal to enter a garden in this one.
It was meant to be best in show, but they had a lot of best in show winners pull out. So
that's tough. Yeah, okay. So they lowered the bar, but it was still going to be the best of the best, kind of.
Yeah. So I would still say
do you
the
think
best of the best.
It'll be back next March?
Yeah.
That's the plan, that everyone's vaccinated, 70%, 80%. Like, we're just opening it up and go for it. That feels right to me. We're looking at November for 70% vaccination for eligible people, and anyway, I don't want to talk about that.
No, fingers crossed it'll be back. So I really hope it does.
If it's back, we'll be there. We'll be there, provided I can get in and out of Victoria without getting locked down for 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. We've been very lucky. So, like I said, I've only got about 10 minutes left. I want to ask you a few questions that have kind of come up along the way. You mentioned before you were into cars growing up. Have you got more than one car now?
I've got a Mercedes GLA 45. And I've got a 1964 Volkswagen Beetle.
They're your two cars. Yep. You do realise the size, the fact that you're 6'7" and they're both smaller. I guess you're in. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I look like the guy from The Simpsons getting out of my Beetle.
Yeah. Are you making fun of my car? That guy. Then. You mentioned we haven't addressed it, but you played basketball. You're obviously a massive fan of collecting shoes. How many pairs of shoes have you got now? Do you count, or have you stopped mentioning that?
Questions. No, just ticked over 100.
And you wear them all?
Not all of them.
Some of them are worth too much, or you don't want to get them.
Yeah, some of them they obviously do devalue. Some of them are worth, like, a lot of the stuff that I've got I bought at retail, but now you look at what it's worth and you think, is it worth wearing that? So, and when you've got 100 pair of shoes, like, it's pretty easy to find a different pair to wear and to keep that pair, dead stock. So, it's, I don't know. I bought everything. Everything I've bought, I bought to wear, but some things
you don't sell them. Have you? Like, do you own basically all the? You haven't gone and on-sold? You don't need. That's not where you derive your income from.
I dabble, but I'd only sell stuff to be able to get other stuff. So, it's,
if you needed to get it through the keeper.
Well, yeah, I think my wife's pretty funny about it. Like, people ask her, "What's how do you feel about it?" And she sort of says, "Well, he doesn't do drugs, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't gamble, he doesn't really. I like craft beer, but I don't, don't have 10 beers every night, kind of thing." So she sort of thinks that everything, could be worse.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
The Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, the block, all that jazz. Is there a financial benefit to doing those, or do you just do it because you love it?
It started off. Look, that's a crazy question, layered. It started off. I've been around the show for so long, and it started off, I really wanted to do a garden, and it was like a bucket list sort of thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to tick the bucket list that I've had my own show garden. And the first show...
As in designed one, not built one, just designed one?
Designed, yeah. So in the first garden I did under Candeo design, we won a bloody gold medal for it. And I don't know, just like, okay, well, that was pretty good. Let's do that every year. So... and when we won the gold medal, it actually changed the level of gardens we were getting. It gave us some weird recognition that, I don't know, we were, accepted, whatever it was. And every time, I feel like every time we've won a gold medal, we've just jumped a notch. So
how many are we talking? You double figures or like?
No, golds. I've got 3 golds. I've got, I've done. God, we've done 16 gardens under Candeo in 8 years or something. So,
as in, you're doing 2 at a time, or are they different?
Yeah, there was one year we did 4. That was our 4 gardens.
And does the gold? Do you get it? Can you get a gold for design and a silver for construction, or the garden is the garden?
The garden's the garden. Yeah. So but there's a construction award. Called the Mark Bentz Construction Award. There's also planting, like Best Use of Plant Life Award, which is an award that I really personally value. It's one of the awards that I go there every year trying to win. Obviously, you want gold medals and things like that, but to me, Best Use of Plant Life is the award that I'm always going there to.
That's almost like the what is it? The people's, not the people's choice, but the landscapers. If you could win an award that was judged by your peers, like that's the one that matters. It doesn't. Who gives a shit about like whether or not that person now wants to use? I mean, you do, but that means something different.
Yeah, I think they bought in. They were going to bring in the Designer's Choice Award, so that you'd have to win it off your peers, and I think that would be the award that I'd be going there with, hoping that I had the honour of winning. I think that'd now probably be the one that would mean the most to me. And it's pretty funny. I probably have less concern about going and winning gold medals and medals now than what I did.
Because you've got some.
Yeah, and I have less concern about getting work out of it as well. Which is sort of good and sort of bad, because it's pretty hard to try and sell to a landscape contractor, hey, let's take a month.
I don't give a shit, but let's go do a garden.
let's take a month off. No one gets paid, and we'll go and build this garden and see what happens and have some fun. And it's probably not ideal, but.
It could be good for a landscaper that hasn't been put on yet, though. If you can team up with someone like almost for you to, it's almost like you helping them out, and it keeps the industry strong and growing. And
and it is fun. It's an amazing experience. Like, I recommend it to anybody who has the drive. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's also an amazing experience, amazing networking, and you'll meet people, you'll create relationships. Like, you and I met 2.5 years ago.
Well, that's the only reason we've met.
Show. So,
I think as well, it's almost like if you've done a garden, and obviously, like I haven't, so I'm not part of the crew. Like there'll be people that you know that you're like, no, he or she, they've done one. They're inside the circle.
Yeah.
Like it's, I don't know. And I guess I think I actually heard you say this. It's the only way you can actually compete in your sport or in your business.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the only scoreboard I've got is turnover and profit and number of shops or whatever else. But there's no competition. Like for you get to go out and actually go, all right, let's put it up against the rest of the country, really, because people build from other states, don't they?
Yeah, and it's a really funny concept. Technically you are competing, but I've kind of never looked at it, because if someone's struggling, mate, everyone pitches in. Like,
so your winning is not their loss kind of thing. You want to
you want everybody to get the best medal possible. Like if everybody could get gold medals, that's absolute ideal, because that means the gardens there are unbelievable, and it also means that it's an amazingly strong show, which means that our industry is representing itself phenomenally to whoever turns up. So it's if we all, like, if everybody wins, the show wins and the whole industry wins. Like it's a positive. It's you want everybody to put forward their best foot possible. So you know, there's been cases where people have turned up and kind of phoned it in a little bit and been slack, and they turn up at 9 and they go home at 3. Mate, no one will help you. But if you turn up at 7 and you're there doing full days and you're having a crack, if it comes down to the last few hours before judging, whoever's finished will come and help and pitch in.
I love that.
It's an amazing experience, and it's some places.
It's interesting to see the people on the Thursday. Like, because that's when we've always got there, and you just got these people that are just like, like it's just collective exhale, and then that Thursday night, everyone's collectively exhaling.
It's quite crazy, because on Wednesday morning, the gates flood open. Everybody comes in, all the media comes in, they want to talk to you, and all you want to do is go to sleep. Like, you've been there for 2 weeks pulling, 10, 12, 15, 16-hour days, and then the show opens and it actually starts and you're absolutely ruined. So
it's the same situation of like, now it's like getting the driver's license, and then now you're like, all right, now you've built the garden. Now you need to spruik it or at least represent it for 3 or 4 days. I need to finish this up. I thank you so much for your time, man. If people want it, so obviously you're effectively running 2 businesses with the school or the college and then the design. If people want to get in touch with you about that, is there an intake for the College of Garden Design, or does that happen at a period?
So we start in March. One thing I can promote, if you don't mind, is we're doing a 1-day seminar on the 11th of September, and we call it So You Want to Be a Garden Designer, and it's basically 1 day run by us about what's involved in being a landscape designer and what you can expect. And it's quite funny. It's quite an amazing day in terms of we actually tell the truth about what you've got to do, and as a designer, and how to make money, and we certainly don't sugarcoat it. We keep it pretty real, and it's an interesting day. So that's live though. That you'd have to be in Victoria for that. No, we're doing it. We're doing it this year. We're doing it on Zoom. So
perfect.
So the tickets are available through Eventbrite. They're free. If anybody wants to come along, and then intake, we start the first week of March, so in 2022.
Okay. This will probably be up in the next week, maybe, if he's got about 4 podcasts to edit between. I don't know, there's a lot going on. But I'll make sure that all gets linked up in the comment section below. If anyone's interested in your landscape design side of things, website and Instagram, I'm guessing? Yeah,
Candeo Design, Candeo Design. Insta's probably the easiest. It's just Candeo Design.
Just slide into your DMs.
Slide into my DMs, and I'll probably send you some emojis.
I don't I think we've covered everything, and I do want to do this again. Maybe we can do something face to face when I'm in Victoria next. Maybe hopefully March next year.
Love to.
For the festival.
Yep.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for doing this, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. It's good to see you again. I'm disappointed we couldn't do this in person, but hopefully next one.